Hello to all of our listeners, and welcome back to The Parent Solution, your one-stop shop for all things educational. I'm your host, Kimberly, and whether you're new or returning, thank you so much for tuning in today. Today's episode is more of a conversational piece, but I'm hopeful that this sort of conversation will shed a little bit more light on the ideas around homeschooling. While recording a recent podcast, I was jokingly, of course, told that I was not a real teacher. I found this to be a very interesting statement to make, with a gross underestimation of the amount of professional training I've taken to get to where I am today. But never mind all of that. If you do want to check out that episode, though, the link is in the show notes, so be sure to check that out. What I wanted to chat about today was what stood out to me behind this statement. Now, the meaning behind this statement is, I think, something that's more important to discuss. This follows along with the idea that anybody who teaches outside of the public school system, or perhaps the private school system, is not a real teacher. Because, of course, if you're a real professional, you should be working in a government-run institution, right? What about private schools? What about online programs? And, of course, the one that's this episode is about today, what about homeschooling? This is something that I think a lot of people don't realize, or perhaps don't pay attention to. Alternatives are not less successful just because they're different. To the contrary, alternative education produces more competent and capable and thinking adults than the public school system does. But more than that, I have to remind the people who are the naysayers and the disbelievers why parents can do a great job educating their children, even, I might say, better than some of the quote-unquote professionals. Now, first things first, licensing and knowledge is, of course, important. I'm not saying that people who aspire to be classroom teachers should completely ignore the licensing processes. What I am saying is that licensing is not everything. As a society, this is something I find really interesting. As a society, we've been conditioned to believe that you have to be licensed to teach, and that if you're not licensed, then to be a good parent, you have to send your child to school. Not only that you have to, you need to. And then, of course, you need to go to work to make enough money to pay the taxes to provide your children with what is deemed to be a proper education. We have also been conditioned into believing that public school education is the only sort of proper education, while anything else is subpar. And when we put those sorts of stereotypes aside, we discover the truth about what public school education is lacking and the real reason why homeschooling is under attack. Homeschooling is under attack only because it's seen as a threat, as a very real threat to the traditional public school system. And there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, it places parents in control of their child's education and brings the learning back home where it's supposed to be. Number two, this is kind of a spin-off, homeschooling strengthens family relationships, of course, because of the amount of time that parents spend with their children and the amount of attention that parents give their child during learning. Most importantly, though, this is the third one, what I would say is the third danger, is that homeschooling or other alternative options takes your child's mind out of the hands of the government. And that right there is the biggest threat of all. Now, while public school education advertisements promise to cover basic learning, such as writing, arithmetic, critical thinking, and reading comprehension, the reality of this system is that basic learning is covered in a quagmire of political agendas and social brainwashing, and, let's not forget, absolutely ridiculous teacher-to-student ratios. Children are not getting the education that they deserve because the system was not designed to provide quality learning. The system was designed to provide society with wage slaves. A majority of people who go to work, who go to a job, do not question the rules, hate their jobs, and live for the weekend. Now, let's take a jump off the deep end and think about the other side. You, the parent, who has been raising and teaching your child from birth, Try to homeschool your child. You're involved in your child's education. They're genuinely educated. They're intelligent. They have excellent communication skills. They can think critically about issues instead of simply regurgitating information. And they love learning. Your child has also been taught life skills that are going to help them thrive and beat the monotony and paycheck to paycheck system of the average workforce. Just to address something here as to why it's critical to talk about these alternatives and to think about these alternatives. Because every parent that I talk to says that their child hates school. Every single parent I talk to says their child hates school. If you think about it, when was the last time you heard any child say that they like school, even the popular kids, that they genuinely like going to school? On the flip side of the coin, I have not had any parent tell me that their child hates learning, because they don't. Children love to learn, and it's an automatic part of their development. They're constantly learning skills and attitudes and cultivating expectations and making experiences and gathering memories. Your choice of education for your child should not be based on government-induced stereotypes, but on real results that prove the quality of learning being offered. Remember, in the same way that you encourage your child to complete tasks by telling them that they're able to do it, I'm encouraging you. You are able to do it. You are able to find the option that works best for you and your child. You are able to make education a priority, and you are able to fight for the quality education that your child deserves. You can do it, and if you need some guidance along the way, Star Students is here to help. That is all, guys, for this week's episode of The Parent Solution. Thank you again so much for tuning in. If you have any comments or questions, either about this issue or others that have come up for you, you can always find me on social media. It's Star Students on Facebook and LinkedIn, or starstudents.learning on Instagram. You can also, of course, reach out through email, which is all over social media channels. Thank you, as always, so much for listening, and I'll be back next week.